Okay, welcome everybody to the December 11, 2024 council meeting for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I'd like to call this meeting to order at, looks like about 1:02. And I would absolutely like to confirm quorum. In fact, between the online Zoom and present here in the room, we have all councilors present and available to engage in the debate. So welcome everybody and thank you for your attendance. I would also like to confirm that our CAO and our clerk and other members of our senior management team are present as well to help out as needed. I would like to read the land acknowledgement statement, please. We want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations, and their stewardship throughout the ages is recognized. Thank you. Okay. A couple of things we need to do, administrative things. First of all, to let everybody know that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and its YouTube channel. And when you participate in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, your voice, and your comments being recorded and posted online. We did invite feedback on the agenda at our normal portal, which is tmlpubliccomment@muskokalakes.ca, and we received none. There is no supplementary agenda, to my recollection. That's good too. And before we go any further, I would like to invite anybody here on council to make a disclosure of any pecuniary interest that they might have based on the information they've seen in the agenda. Any pecuniary interest that they need to declare? All right, then I'll go first. I have a pecuniary interest in the budget. There is a reflection of the of a grant that's being made to the Muskoka Lakes Public Library. My wife chairs the board of directors of that library, and so I will be stepping out. We'll be pulling that and separating it from the rest of the discussion, and I will be stepping out and recusing from participation in that matter. I see Councillor Burry, your hand is up.
Likewise, I have a pecuniary interest in the budget. The Muskoka Lakes Museum is requesting an operating grant, and I am a director of the museum volunteer board and the treasurer of the corporation.
Thank you for that. You will fill in the form and submit it as required, as will I.
As soon as I can find it on the website, I'll be doing it. No guarantees on the timing.
Thank you, I think. Okay, just so by way of notice so that everybody understands, we're going to read motions every once in a while. The motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders, and that's simply done to expedite the process. Number two, I'm going to ask that all members, when they vote, physically raise their hand until your vote has been confirmed by me. If the vote is not clear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk, and in that case, that will not be considered a recorded vote. So without any further ado, we're going to jump to a really cool part of this proceeding today. We're going to have the presentation of service awards to several of our staff members. Just before I do individual awards, there are, I believe, 6 on the list. 6 on the list. I believe 3 are present to receive their awards. Maybe only 2. Oh no, Nick's back there. And I want to mention that, loyalty is kind of a rare breed these days. People tend to move around quite quickly. The best understanding that I have of the value of loyal employees comes from none other than Sir Richard Branson, who has a spotted history with other things, but he was right about this. He said the goal really when you bring people into an organization is to train them and support them well enough that they could find a job anywhere, but at the same time to treat them well enough that they don't want to go anywhere. And I think from my experience in the township and from my exposure to the staff members throughout the organization, we've done a remarkable job of recruitment and training. We have some really special people. All of them are really special people working here. And I have to believe that a good reason why they're still here and why they're getting awards that in some cases I think are 25-year service is because they're being extremely well led. And that's a credit to the leadership and the management through our staff, and also to the people who have selected the Township of Muskoka Lakes as a place to build their career. So that having been said, I have 3 awards. I'm going to do them in order, in ascending order. I didn't see, oh yeah, there's Ryan. How could I miss him? First one is for Ryan Morrell. I'm going to stand up. Ryan, if you can just come forward or come wherever you want to come. Care where you 5 years, Ryan. I actually, one of the few people I remember when we started. I'm really thrilled to have you here because of that your judgment and your discipline and focus. Oh, want to hear me? All right. Can you hear me now?
We could sort of hear you before. It's not like the baritone is a shrinking violet.
You can hear me all the way there with the mic on.
Yeah,
anyhow, I was mentioning, you know, thank you. Thank you very much. Has anybody got a guitar? I was mentioning Ryan is one of the service award winners that I actually was here when he joined, when he started, and has been a tremendous guiding light on his team. Never better shown than over the last couple of weeks. You've done a remarkable job. 5 years of service is terrific. Thank you for your service and congratulations. Oh, they can't. Sorry, they can't see. You want to see too? Okay. That's fine. We'll do that. We didn't rehearse. Okay, we need another recipient. Kiara Guy is here. Please come forward. 5 years of dedicated service to the community. Mark is your leader, and I think you have a great choice in leaders. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for the service and for your time with us. Thank you. The last one is Nick Snyder, and Nick is here as well. Nick is 10 years, and Nick, your leader, is a new one. It's Jennifer Huff, but I know you've made a huge contribution. You're an easy guy to work with and to talk to and to learn from, and that's all extremely valuable to our organization. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now, right here with other people. All of us together. Shoulder to shoulder. Okay. It's cutting me out. There's the layer. Balance. Turn sideways. There we go. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll take one of these.
Take mine.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to regular agenda. And excuse me 1 second. The main part first.
Just deal with the consent, just let them know that the report has to do with the item pulled. So let's just deal with the consent and then we'll deal with the item pulled.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We have a slight change to the plan here. I believe we're going to have a delegation in a couple of minutes relating to the Jack and Stella thing matter. In the meantime, I'm going to read the part relating to the consent agenda, pulling it, and then we're going to deal with the stuff on the consent agenda that does not involve that particular matter. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the December 11, 2024 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Number 1, November 13, 2024 General Finance Committee minutes and action items 1 through 4. Number 2, November 13, 2024 council minutes. Number 3, November 14, 2024 Planning Committee minutes and action items 1 through 5 and 8 through 14. And number 4, November 19, 2024 Special General Finance Committee minutes and action items 1 through 4. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Everybody's clear that what we've done is pulled the one item, Jack and Stella, is that the name? Yeah, in that name. And everything else on the consent agenda is up for debate or discussion if you have any. I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we're going back now to the one that was pulled, and this is the one that we've had a slight change up just at the last minute here. I have a resolution that deals with the item that was pulled, Jack and Stella. We do have a staff report, and somebody's going to come and speak to that issue, I believe, and present the report. Following that, we will be hearing from a delegation. And I'm afraid I don't know the name of the, oh, Terry, Ms. Ledger, on your own. I didn't realize that. That's good. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start with this resolution moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 2.3.2 of the Township's procedural bylaw 2023-089, as amended, the rules of procedure be hereby suspended in regards to provision of notice to allow for a delegation from the applicant and or agents for the duration of item 7A, and that the rules of procedure be reinstated at the conclusion of said item. So we're going to, because the request for delegation just came in, we're being asked to basically change the rules or amend the rules to allow for a delegation of new information. If I'm not mistaken, we require 70% vote on this in order to clear the hurdle. Sorry. Oh, 75. Oh, 2/3, 66. Okay. All right. So we'll need 66, 7. We need 7 votes. Yeah, that'll be it. All right. I've read the resolution, and I'm going to actually, unless anybody has any questions or comments, I will call the question. All in favor? And is anyone opposed? Seeing none, that carries. And then I think I'm going to invite staff's the presentation of staff's matter, if you could, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly, and good afternoon, members of council. As council may recall, cash in lieu of parking application CP-02/24 in the name of Jack and Stella Limited was heard by Planning Committee on November 14th, 2024, where Planning Committee decided to defer the application in order to investigate concerns raised at the Planning Committee meeting regarding appropriate floodproofing measures, satisfactory confirmation that the addition is minor and does not impact flood flows in consistency with the provincial planning statement, and potential liability of an approval and measures to mitigate liability concerns. In an effort not to delay a decision, Planning Committee requested that the application proceed to the December council meeting rather than to the subsequent Planning Committee meeting as an unfinished business item. Following the deferral, site-specific floodplain mapping has been completed by Pinestone Engineering Limited and submitted to the township. This has been included in the agenda package on page 16. Pinestone stated in an email to the township that based on this mapping, the proposed addition is located just outside of the flood limit, and therefore they do not anticipate an impact on flood flows or boundaries. Given that district staff are responsible for floodplain mapping in Muskoka, they were provided the new information for review and comment. District staff identified 3 outstanding items: clarification on the methodology used to determine the new floodplain elevation, clarification if the new floodplain delineation includes the wave uprush area, and clarification on whether the addition would be accessible in a flood event. At the time of report writing, Pinestone had committed to providing a response to the items identified by the district. Township staff were unable to change our recommendation on the application based on the information received to date. Additional information from the applicant's agent regarding access, wave uprush, and building modifications to provide flood proofing will further inform the decision-making process. Since the time of report writing, Pinestone has provided a floodplain assessment memo to address the items the district identified. Given the timing of receipt of this memo, it is not in the agenda package. This memo clarified the methodology that was used, calculated wave uprush, and included a number of recommendations for building considerations. Township staff have some questions regarding the memo, and discussions with Pinestone are ongoing. Mainly, staff are not yet satisfied that appropriate access could be achieved in a flooding event. Additionally, staff would note that when including the wave uprush calculations, Pinestone has confirmed that a portion of the proposed addition would be within the floodplain in the event of a flood, but have recommended that the finished floor elevation be above the maximum wave uprush elevation of 227 meters above sea level. While staff are of the opinion that if committee is considering approval of the application, that a decision should be further deferred to provide time to have the floodplain memo provided by Pinestone, reviewed by township engineers or district qualified staff, township staff are cognizant that this is an application for cash in lieu of parking, and we do not have any concerns directly related to a reduction in the number of parking spaces. The municipal solicitor has confirmed that provided council acts within the parameters described in the staff report, that there would be no liability flowing from its decision. Staff have no further comments, but are happy to assist council with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crowder. Does anybody have any questions? Well, Ms. Crowder is at the podium. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm not sure that Ms. Crowder could answer this through you to her, I guess. I never had asked the question last time they were here, where does the staff park? Because we have asked that question when others have come forward, particularly in Port Carling in the past, but I'm just curious, where does the staff park?
If I may, just for my clarification, you're talking about the staff of the applicant, Jack and Stella.
Through you, Mayor Kelly, Councilor Nishikawa. I cannot answer that question. I think it would be a question that we would ask the agent.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Not yet, but I think she's intending to delegate, so you'd probably ask her then. Sir. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just to provide a bit of clarification, in the context of a property that has a legal non-complying parking deficiency, when an addition is proposed to a building, the total parking requirement isn't required to be made up. In other words, the only parking that would be required in this case would be for the addition. I just thought I'd make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Crowder? I'm not seeing any. All right, thank you very much. All right, up next, we're going to hear from Ms. Ledger with your delegation. Welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Terry Ledger, 167 Medora Street, Port Carling, P0B1J0. I am agent for the applicant. And thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to go over the final report, which included the extra requested items from the township after the first report, which was the one we had asked for, or that we did through planning committee, which was getting that elevation. So Pinestone Engineering was hired and found that the entirety of the addition is outside of the floodplain, which is fantastic. So that was good news. And they have finished the study with wave rush and the other questions that the district had requested. So I just wanted to read it so that everybody here is clear what the recommendations from the engineer were. So one was habitable floor space. All habitable floor space must remain above the maximum flood and wave uprush elevation of 227. Since the finished floor elevation of the addition will match the existing elevation of 227.53, the requirement is satisfied. Foundation openings, all foundation openings for the addition must be located above the maximum flood and wave uprush elevation of 227. Basement design, the basement design should consider potential erosion from wave uprush by extending footings or piers below grade, which we would do anyway for frost protection. The engineer also discussed this with our chief building official, who is the one in charge of building design for flooding. And fourth, floodplain compliance. The addition must be built outside the static flood elevation of 226.3 as indicated in the District of Muskoka's floodplain mapping. The attached site-specific topographic survey confirms that the addition is entirely outside the static flood elevation. So that was sent to the township on Friday, just before noon. There has been additional correspondence between the township and Pinestone, and I think this should sum it up, because really the concern is during an emergency flood, what happens. And the engineer said in a major flood event, any emergency vehicle, in fact, every vehicle traveling on Muskoka Road 169 would actually have to use Bell Falls Road as the floodwater depth under the rail bridge, if everybody's familiar with Bella, I'm assuming, is actually the low level, and it would exceed 2 meters. So actually, this is the route you would take if there were a severe flooding event. And because that is the low point, he also, in the report, which I'm sure you will get at some point, indicates that the water actually travels down under the bridge and towards the Moon River. That's kind of the flow. When they show the mapping, and you can see it in the 3D, it actually just sort of stops, but it's actually this high, which is odd. There's no barrier there. Obviously, it would flow downhill, and which I learned as a plumbing company owner, water flows downhill. So I'm here for any questions you may have. And the parking, I can speak to that if through
Sure,
you
go ahead.
To Councillor Nishikawa. Yes, the most of the people who work at Jack and Stella's actually they own a home across from Bella Bay Inn, and they actually walk to work because there isn't any parking. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have questions for Ms. Ledger? I'm seeing none. If you can indulge me for just a moment, I must admit the notion of whether a particular plot of land is in a floodplain or not seems to me that it's kind of scientific. It's not up for debate, I would think. So you're representing the findings of Pinestone. Is that the finding of a surveyor or an engineer, or what stamp do we get that with?
It's an engineer stamp. And in the report, one of the questions from the district was, what is the methodology that you use? Which again is a scientific thing. It's how we, you say how you're going to measure something so that everybody knows they're using the same type of measurement or understand it in comparison to what they've done. So he outlines that in the report. And at the end, it's stamped by an engineer.
Thank you. Anybody with other questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. To Ms. Crowder, I suppose I wanted to first hear Ms. Ledger. So we have, I guess my question to Ms. Crowder would then be, given that the agenda came out on Friday and this information was made available that Ms. Ledger has referred to on Friday, I heard that staff is still not willing to bless this file. Is that correct?
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Zavitz. The document was received by Pinestone at 11:30 on Friday. And as you all know, the council agenda is posted at noon on Friday. So, you know, it was pretty limited time for staff to be able to review that document and then sort of change our staff report that had been written to then incorporate that. From that point, we reviewed it, had some questions, and given that the township staff are not experts on flooding, we looped in the district, who has a flooding, a staff member that is more well versed in flooding and the floodplain mapping. And based on the information that's been provided to date, we have not had time to really analyze it and potentially change our recommendation, given that we do have some questions about the information that's been provided and have not yet heard back from the district on that information either, who we would like to consult, given that they are the experts in the field. So at this time, we're not prepared to change our recommendation, given that we just haven't had the time to analyze the new information that's been provided. That being said, today, I think should council, wish for staff to analyze that information and put forward a recommendation, we would ask that the application be deferred to allow us time to do so.
Councillor Zavitz, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. So thank you for those answers. I guess my only thought would be a deferral, as you've mentioned, would be highly recommended from my perspective. So I would certainly ask the others to consider a deferral as opposed to a denial, which is how it reads.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. I'm just going to pick up and key off of Ms. Crowder's report. Your comment was there's a third option the way I'm reading this, and the third option would be for an approval, but conditional on the receipt of the additional information you need to satisfy, or is that the engineering report that you've already received?
Through you, Mayor Kelly. Just so I'm understanding, you're saying in the staff report that we had put forward a recommendation for potential approval?
Not a recommendation, but you suggested that if in the alternative, we were moving towards a deferral, or an approval, that we, I guess it's a deferral. I'm sorry. It is. I thought it was a condition, but it's a different thing. Okay.
Yeah, no, just to clarify through you, Mayor Kelly, staff are saying we haven't been able to change our recommendation from that first report, which it was recommending denial, given that we weren't able to satisfy ourselves that the policies of the PPS have been met as of yet. But if committee is considering approval of the application, we would recommend that the application be deferred so we can fully analyze that information and come forward to you with a recommendation for either approval or denial.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, anybody else with a question or a comment? First, Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Bosenworth.
I think of fairness, rather than putting it down, I would like to see a deferral as Councillor Zavitz made, just so we dot all our i's and cross the t's. Thank you.
Okay. One moment, please. Okay, Councillor Bosenworth, did you have a question?
I did, Your Worship. Question to Ms. Crowder. I think in your report, you had said that after consultation with, I believe it was our solicitor, that approval would not increase risk. Did I interpret that right? And could you expand on it for me?
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Bosenworth. Yes, so we did reach out to the municipal solicitor, given that at the previous planning committee meeting, there was some concern around potential approval of the application and if that would have any liability on the township, should a flooding event happen and heaven forbid the access wasn't available. And municipal solicitor did say that the township would not be held liable based on the decision you make today, provided you are acting within the I can pull the exact wording. Lawyer speak. Yes, so with respect to liability, each decision point and its associated context must be considered individually. Differing applicable legislation and policies inform council's decision-making dependent on the application at hand. And provided council acts within those parameters, there would be no liability flowing from its decision in the context of this application.
Councillor Bosenworth.
So does that mean as long as we make the right decision at each decision point, there's no liability?
Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Mayor, I think it goes without saying that none of us, at least on staff, are lawyers, so I'm hesitant to speak to exactly what our solicitor means. But what I believe it means is that provided that you're taking into consideration input of staff at each point throughout the process in your decision making, you wouldn't be liable for any decision. So I think that's why in this case we're recommending the deferral, so that we have a little bit more time just to go over the details that were provided to us late on Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Anybody else with a question? All right, we're going to get this in play so we can have a debate. In order to do that, I'm going to read the resolution that was originally pulled. It was part of the original consent agenda. We pulled it out, and we'll use that and work from there if we want to make changes or amendments. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that action items 6 and 7 contained in the November 14, 2024 Planning Committee minutes be considered by Council as follows. That cash in lieu of parking application CP 02/24 Jack and Stella Ltd. be denied. So that's the starting point for a debate or a discussion now. We don't have to confine ourselves to questions and decide what we want to do with this moving forward. I've heard at least 2 councillors, maybe 3, suggest that a deferral would be a choice, maybe 4. I'm not going to call for a straw poll, but I'm seeing enough support that I think instead of denying, it should be deferred. That's what I'm seeing around the table. So I'm going to get a fresh resolution. Somebody's stuck in the elevator.
Do we have something under the screen, mechanical under the screen, that we use to keep stuff in those cabinets? We do have to look. Will you read that? Stop.
Okay, so I'm going to read this first. How do we deal with that after I've read this? Yeah.
This administration.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to read a second resolution, which will clean up the one that we had carried forward from the last session. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that cash in lieu of parking application CP-02-24, Jack and Stella LTD, be deferred and brought back to a future council meeting to allow for the receipt of the satisfactory additional information as detailed in report plan -2024-176. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? All right, I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. So we're done with that issue? Okay, thank you very much. That moves that forward to a later date and but still keeps it alive for consideration. Oh. All right, just so that everybody knows, someone is servicing the elevator and that noise apparently comes with the service. That's part of the service. Yeah, really. Okay, all right. What are we doing here? Sorry, I've lost track of my budget. Okay, we're gonna move on to the budget now. And are we gonna have a report from Director Donaldson? Please.
We're good. So thank you, Your Worship. So good afternoon, Council. So following committee deliberations on October 22nd and November 19th, and having received comments from the community, staff are presenting the 2025 operating and capital budget for final adoption by Council. So the report and updated budget schedules reflect the recommendations of committee to Council, and staff have also included a minor technical adjustment to update the 2025 assessment numbers to reflect the final roll numbers, which has resulted in a tax rate increase of 8.9% over 2024, which is $13.19 per $100,000 of property assessment value. The total tax levy for 2025 will be $17,569,000, and that is a 10.8% increase in taxes derived from the property tax rate and assessment growth resulting from development. This tax levy also includes a $6 million contribution to capital reserves. Capital spending for 2025 will be $12,962,000. Total reserve balances are forecasted to decrease by just over $3 million in the year. I would add that District Council is still contemplating their budget, which would change the overall tax impact on local ratepayers. And by municipal regulation, Council is also required to recognize excluded expenses from the municipal budget that are recorded when using public sector accounting standards. Under GAAP principles, the township surplus would be $5,967,700. And that's mainly as a result of the difference between the capital expenditures in the year and what would be reported as amortization expense under PSAP. Again, I wish to thank and acknowledge all the staff for their efforts in preparing this budget, and I'm happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Director Donaldson while he's standing there? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Director Donaldson, just a quick question. This most recent snow event, or 2 weeks worth of snow event, I guess I suspect that that's going to put us way behind the 8 ball as it relates to concluding the 24 year end, and we're going to end up behind budget by some amount, or could you give me any insights on that? And that will then roll into 2025.
Director Donaldson.
So through your worship, so the impact of the additional overtime or efforts to do the snow removal and snow cleanup would be a 24 expense. When we have extraordinary snow events like we've had this year, those would always have an impact on the end. We don't budget necessarily for the worst case scenarios, so they would be drawn from reserves during any typical year, but they certainly will have an impact on our year-end position this year. Snow events occurring after the year, after into January would be next year's expense.
Can I just follow up? One quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that, my recollection was that the snow event in January last year put us over budget by a couple $100,000. Do you expect this is going to be of that magnitude, like 300,000 or 400,000?
Through your worship, I don't have any estimates yet from the Public Works or Operations Division in terms of what the efforts are at this time. So I don't know what the magnitude of that would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bosenworth.
Thank you, and through you. Given that our reserves are reducing by $3 million, I would just like to get reconfirmation that for next year, we will have a reserve policy. I think we've talked about that for a couple of years now. And I think it's, given that our reserves are dropping, we're not matching our, we're not covering our capital expenditures with our contributions to reserve, and that's partly why it's dropping. It seems it becomes more important that we know what is the lower level of our reserves and make sure we comply with that. So that's a question.
Through your worship. So as acknowledged in the report, we have taken a note of council's requests for an update to that policy, and that will be coming forward in 2025.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. This, because we are pulling two items for recusal, is going to be kind of a layered approval, if you will. There's more than one resolution. In fact, I think there's 4 or 5 of them altogether.
Agenda to get it on the floor. So if everyone's good, just getting it on the floor, and then you can start.
Okay. I'll read this one. Yeah. All right, we're going to read the one from the agenda package. There will be changes, obviously, from this. This is the one you've already seen. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the 2025 report on excluded expenses, Ontario Regulation 284/09, regarding expenses excluded from the 2024 draft budget and forecast as included in report FIN-2024-022 be approved, and that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2025 operating budget and capital budget and forecast as presented in report FIN-2024-023 with 1, total operating expenditures of $18,563,000. 2, total operating revenues of $10,452,900. 3, net transfers to reserves and reserve funds, excuse me, of $9,458,900. 4, net required levy of $17,569,000. And 5, gross capital expenditures of $12,962,000 for 2025. And $128,859,400 for the period from 2025 to 2034 be adopted. So from here, we're going to pull back, read another resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that the 2024 draft budget and forecast resolution be divided to allow for the Muskoka Lakes Museum grant and the Muskoka Lakes Library funding to be voted on separately. So does anybody have any questions on that particular matter? We're going to do this one first, right? We're going to take a vote on this first. No questions. This relates to 2 recusals we heard about earlier, pecuniary interests. Any questions, any comments? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Next up, we will be asked by resolution to approve everything that was in the budget except for those 2 withdrawn amounts. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the 2025 report on excluded expenses, Ontario Regulation 284/09, regarding expenses excluded from the 2024 draft budget and forecast is included in report FIN-2024-022 be approved, and that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2025 operating budget and capital budget and forecast as presented in report FIN-2024-023, bracket excluding the museum grant and the Muskoka Lakes Library funding, bracket, with number one, operating expenditures of $17,914,600, operating revenues of $10,386,000. Number three, net transfers to reserves and reserve funds of $9,458,900. Number four, net required levy of $17,027,500. And number five, gross capital expenditures of $12,908,500 for 2025 and $128,329,400 for the period from 2025 to 2034 be adopted. Any questions? Councillor Bosenworth.
Having written down the numbers from the first resolution and the second one, I think that those two, all those types of line items were withdrawn from this resolution relating to the library and the museum. Is that correct? Thank you.
Okay, an issue that has been pointed out. Just to clarify, in the second paragraph of that resolution, I made reference to FIN 2024-023, and in fact, it should be FIN 2024-022, just for the record. You missed it. Counting on you, Rob. Anybody else? Sorry. Anybody, another question or comment? I'm seeing none. I will call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. You want me to mark that? All right. We now have a resolution where we are going to approve one of the pulled items, which is the museum operating grant. And I believe Councillor Burry, you suggested you were going to, and he did. Okay, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes operating expenditure of $40,000 for the Muskoka Lakes Museum be approved. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. And next, I will be stepping aside for the Deputy Mayor to take the chair and deal with this other one. Thank you. Do we call him or how does he know it?
This is a fast one. Thank you, sir. Okay, I shall read this resolution.
Try and figure out what.
Oh. Ready to read? Okay. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2025 operating budget and capital budget and forecast for the Muskoka Lakes Library with one, operating expenditures of $608,400, operating revenues of $66,900. We skipped three. Should I say 3, 4? 1, 2, 4, 5. Gosh, okay, 4, required levy of $541,500. And 5, gross capital expenditures of $53,500 for 2025 and $530,000 for the period from 2025 to 2034 be adopted. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Thank you, that carries.
Thank you very much for that. So we're done on the budget, correct? Nothing left? Who's coming up, Tim? Mr. Sapko, would you care to come up and share your report with us, please? Yeah, the report for council today is the award.
10.
Oh, apologies. So the report for our council today is to authorize the award of a request proposal for the Public Works yard location study. Quick overview of the project. The project will review the current locations of the township's 3 yards that deliver the roads, fleet, parks, and facilities maintenance operations, as well as a shared fire hall site. Request for proposal was issued in March of 2024, but no responses were received. It was reissued again this fall, and at this time 2 responses were received. Based on the proposal scoring matrix, the highest rated proposal is KPMG, and the proposal fee exceeds the approved budget for this project, and staff are recommending that the shortfall be reallocated from the Studies and Reviews Reserve Fund, and that council approve award of the project. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you for that. Anyone with questions? I'm not seeing any. I'll read a resolution. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved, the council award P-2024-36 for the completion of a Public Works yard location study to KPMG LLP in the amount of $99,376 plus HST. And that the approved 2024 capital budget for the project be increased by $47,600 to a total of $99,400, with the shortfall to be funded from the Studies and Reviews Reserve. And that the Director of Operational Services be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with this contract. Okay, any questions? Any comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Director Perosi, you will if you could go up and give us a couple of reports, please, so we can move these forward.
Thank you. Through you, the report is before you. As per normal process, if there is a desire to discuss the applicant, this matter would need to be tabled until after a discussion in closed session. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you for that. Does anyone, Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you through you to Crystal. Just in general, again, knowing how we used to operate the hall boards and different things like that, is there an opportunity for a hall board to actually have intake or input onto who we're accepting as new members?
Director Perosi.
Thank you. That's a good question. That's absolutely something we could look at in the future. Right now, it would have to come back to this table because it is a committee of council to appoint. Right now, the policy reads that it's approval of the mayor and then comes to the table, but it's definitely something that we could look at changing and having it go to the hall board group first and then come to this table.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. And in this case, and because it's such a critical community initiative, in this particular case, other members of that community were in total support.
Director Perosi.
Thank you. If I can just go back to that point, I think the reason why the policy is written that way is for when the hall board is set up initially. So we haven't typically in the past had so many coming that aren't all at the beginning of the term. So I don't think it's something that we've looked at. So because we don't have a hall board established at that time, the hall board needs to be selected by the mayor and then established. But I do think it's something, since we're getting these a lot more, I think it's something that we should look at, having a process to establish the group and then an ongoing as people are interested. So I think that's something that we can develop as we grow and change.
And sorry, anyone else with a question? Because I've got a quick one. This may have happened in this circumstance, it doesn't matter, but the hall board that's currently in place could always go out and recruit new recruits. And okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that that's not somehow precluded. Okay, good. Okay. Have I read this resolution? I don't think I have. Let me read it. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Mazan, be it resolved that citizen members be appointed to community center hall boards as detailed in confidential memo CCS-2024-29 and that confidential matter memo CCS-2024-29 hereby be made public. Any further questions, comments? I'll call it. All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. Okay. Second one up, Director Prochi, you're going to walk us through your comparators on compensation.
Thank you. As for the council remuneration and expense policy, it is required that once every council term, a review of the salary and benefits be undertaken at least 18 months prior to the municipal election. Staff are embarking on that process now with a consultant as per the policy and are looking for approval of the recommended comparators as attached as Appendix A to the report, which are in alignment with the ones that were used for the staff compensation review that just completed. I am available for any questions.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions on the list of comparators? Councillor Bosenworth and Councillor Mazan.
I would like to suggest that we include in that comparators, not just compensation, but council development and education, and specifically to learn what their policies are with respect to attending conferences. And I wonder if that could happen.
Director Prochi.
Thank you. Through you. Staff are developing the questionnaire that's going to go out from our consultant. We do have some questions in there right now in regards to conferences and attending conferences, but it is in alignment with compensation for it. So whether you're getting paid for your time being there, whether you're getting mileage, all of that, that is something we can certainly include in that questionnaire, and we can do that for the policy.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you to Crystal. One of the things I find challenging when I look at these and the comparators and that type of thing is that Township Muskoka Lakes is, in my opinion, not using the right resident count at all. And so in some ways, I almost want to look at who else is dealing with how many billions of dollars in property values or that type of thing. Because honestly, saying we are only a community of 6,000 or 7,000 people is not true at all. And so I just find that very, it challenges me as a counselor to think, why am I out there more and more and more now? Like we're so much busier. And I don't know that other communities are doing the same type of thing that we are doing. And that's why I'm a little bit, and again, it comes down to the population number for me.
Did you want to respond? Because I have a comment on that as well. But you first, if you know.
Sure. I can just respond that they do look at population as well as the taxation. They do try and look at similar types of municipalities in what they offer. So municipalities that are similar to us in size, but also similar to us in being a seasonal area as well, that tends to inflate in the seasonal months or in the summer months. But it's something we can look at, but that is part of what they try and look at when they develop the list.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, you have your hands up.
Yeah, it's just thinking, it's when I started this task for this job, I never thought about well, how much money I was going to earn. It was more what I could contribute. But now more and more when I'm doing this job, and it's a 7-day-a-week job, especially in the seasonal, and we're very busy. And I would think, I don't know what it's comparable to maybe a Barrie type of counselor or whatever they call them down there, that we are extremely busy with the responsibility and the files we're reading. They did short-term rentals, we're doing short-term rentals. So I'm wondering, we should be looking at that, the job, that the responsibility and the areas that we cover. Like in City of Barrie, I mean, you got a, 10-block square. We got a significant difference, and we really act as township counselors rather than ward counselors up here. So I don't know how you can think about that and how you fit that into a comparable, but we are unique. So, all right, keep smiling. I think, all right, take that in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Mazan because I think I skipped over her by accident. You had your hand up and
Well, thank you through you. I don't know if there was a specific ask though from Councilor Roberts or just did, okay.
Sure.
Okay, so my comment or question, I guess, as you're gathering your data, and it's actually building upon what Councilor Bosworth had suggested. Is there an opportunity? I guess it would be separate from this because this is a specific around compensation, but it's a bit connected when you think about training and development because of council. And there's so many different new ways that all of us can be learning, whether it's content about a topic or process. We heard from the Integrity Commissioner earlier today that I would be interested to know, is there a different approach that we could contemplate to ensure that we all have access if it's something we're interested in? And so, and I just think like since COVID, there's so many different opportunities that are now online and Zoom that are pretty cost effective. But the policies I think as they are now are a bit limiting. So it's almost a bigger conversation because to me, it's training and development, no different than staff, that we would have a new look at that.
Director Brochi, did you have a?
I said, I think I forgot to say through you
Oh,
to
fine.
Director Brochi. I do have a question now.
Thank you. Typically through this process, it's been the salary and benefits that are looked at, and that is a benefit. I think we've looked historically at the financial side of that benefit, but I do see the value in looking at what those packages could be or what that could be in terms of training and development for staff. So I think it's a great thing to include in the questionnaire, and then possibly when the information comes back, depending on what it is, that might be something that you choose to handle a little bit separately from this process, and look at how you might want to change that and update it. To your point, in regards to taking training, something like the AMO training that comes out, and you get quite a few emails about them, it only allows for one per term for a counselor, and it is quite cost effective. So is that something that maybe we want to utilize that wasn't as readily available when this policy was written? So things have changed. So I do think there's value to looking at that as a whole.
Thank you for that. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, just looking at the chart on page 302 and that, they show our population is 6,588, yet our sign is saying 8,000. I think there should be another line there that says seasonal population for each of them. I don't know how old this chart is, but it really looks outdated to me. And I'd like to see it brought up in that, because when somebody phones me, I don't say, oh, are you a seasonal? Because I just look after the permanent population. I take the call no matter who it is. So that makes quite a difference. Thank you.
Let me read this resolution because we're into comments. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Bosworth. Be it resolved that Council approve the recommended comparators as outlined in Appendix 1 to report LS-2024-036 for the Council Remuneration and Benefit Review. So, anyone else with comments? Councillor Edwards, you were.
Yeah, well, I just said, I was asking, when was that page done last? Because it's not current, obviously.
I may look to Ms. Lehman, but this was provided to us by the consultant. So I'm not sure if we have a date of when
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. Through you, Chair, this information I believe is coming from the FIR, the Financial Information Report. And so we're reporting our population data, and I'm not completely sure how the seasonal data, I think the district has run some programs to collect that to be a bit more specific, but I know through this. So when it comes to the comparators, we're trying to, as much as we can, show the reasons why we're using them and using one source of where everyone is reporting in their municipal data. So that, I think that's why you're not seeing the seasonal data for the other areas that are probably seasonal as well.
No, I will follow up. Yeah, but what I'm saying, looking at it, even our population is it's out 1,400 people. When I look at this chart, it's saying that we have 6,588. Our sign coming in says 8,000. So they're using old information. And this is what happens. I've seen this on a lot of consultants thing. They just grab 2 or 3 years ago and flip it in. So we're not getting it that properly done, are we not? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burry, I see your hands up, and then Councillor Kent.
Yeah, I'll start with an apology. Someone said the seasonal word too many times and my nuclear reactor went off. I'm going to point out that the vast majority of new builds of people that we call seasonal are 4-season R60 insulated homes that can be used any day of the year at the flip of a switch. Many of them keep their houses going 7/24 right through 365 days a year, and we never know when they're going to show or not show and have the means to be able to come and go as they please. I think that what we're using is a significantly outdated standard, and we need to start thinking about our population. Some of them have several homes and can choose to be where they want to be when they want to be. And, you know, the difficulty for our staff is that we need to be able to provide the services at those times. So I'm just, you know, getting a little tired of seeing things that, you know, we've got a regular population, a seasonal population. I mean, I know that I will have half a dozen neighbors up between Christmas and New Year's. Happens every year. And they'll be up for March break, and they'll be up for other times. And that's all across the lake, and I can see it with lights on, and you know, whenever I'm driving or traveling. So I think, you know, we've got to start to look at ourselves a little differently, and maybe there's not a comparator that's direct to us. We're a little different, and part of that is the lakefront affluence. My apologies.
I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to go to Councillor Kent first, and I have a question for you, Councillor Burry. Councillor Kent?
I actually think that Councillor Burry just expressed my comment, which is you absolutely have to use the seasonal, non-seasonal population, the full, you know, full blow of 35,000 or 38,000. That more properly reflects what this township is and any workload or, you know, commitments required to a much larger group of people. It's not just 6,000 local residents. And I would say maybe Collingwood is probably the closest, although I think their gap between permanent and seasonal, if you want to use those horrible words, is probably smaller because more people have become permanent up there. But it's probably best of all the people on the list. It's the most consistent comparative, in my opinion. Anyway, I would hope that we would use those numbers going forward and not revert back to the 6,000 number, which is not reflective of anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to jump in because to both of you, I 100% agree that the challenge is identifying what that number is, what that real number is. We know how many doors we have here. We just don't know how many people are behind the ones that aren't part of the census, the federal census. So we're making estimates, and we're taking guesses. And because we really don't know how many people are in any particular place as a resident, as opposed to how many people own them and how many doors there are. That's driven by census. That's why we know the permanent residency. So, and to compound the problem, the whole hospital debate was predicated on us, on TML, at its 7,600, I forget the number, it wasn't 6,800 and it wasn't 8,000. It was some number driven by the last census in 2020 or something, that confirmed actually how many people put their head down in the bed, and call this place home. So I agree that we need to be reflective of the seasonal. The seasonal resident is as demanding as anybody else. And it's usually compressed over a short period of time. They need service. They need to be represented. They have a high need for that kind of stuff. And I think that the compensation on this council needs to reflect the fact that it's more than 6,800 people or whatever the number is. I just don't know how to call out the right number. I'll go to you, Councilor Nishikawa, in a second. I think the work that was done, the second home survey or study, made some kind of broad sweeping assumptions. I forget the actual number, 3.4 people per door or something like that. There was a number attached to it, but that was completely lost in all of the calculations on what demand this population would place on a local hospital, because they based their demands on the 8,000 number or less. Councilor Nishikawa, then Councilor Bosenworth.
Thank you. Through you, to you, I was thinking about the voters list. So the voters list, because I have known, or I have known, especially when there's an election, people add people to their household, depending, so all of a sudden the kids are voters as well. And I'm just going to say that that's a better, to me, truer number, I suppose.
Sorry, Director Prochi.
I just want to add to that because I think that's a great comment. As soon as the election ended, there is no voters list. So we technically don't have a voters list anymore. But I do agree that that is a great list to go off of, but we don't have one.
Councilor Bosenworth.
Councilor Nishikawa took most of my words, but I will add that number. The last time I looked at it, that we had a number, and I think they are published at times, it was around 16,000.
So what was around 16,000?
The
seasonal?
voters, no, the voters list for the township.
The voters list ignores anybody under 19.
Yep. I'm just saying it's a mark.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I think we agree. Now, I'm trying to figure out, is there a proxy for the seasonal population that we can get better access to? It does assessed value for the real estate make a difference on a per capita basis? I don't know what it is, but I'm afraid that, we can all agree that we need a bigger number. We just don't think we ever know what the number is. I don't know that, what turns on it? Is it, we've got a full complement of counselors doing a great job. Is there a threat that they won't come back next term because they're not paid enough? Or is it a threat that we aren't going to get the caliber? I just don't know how much of this, I don't know what this drives, to be really honest with you. And I'll go with Director Prochi and then Councilor Mazan.
Sorry, to you. Did you want me to respond to?
Please.
So it's just to remain competitive. So similarly to why we do it with staff, it was every 5 years. We changed it to every 4 to coincide with doing it for council. It's just to remain competitive.
Competitive implies that that there's somewhere else to go. I can't run in Seguin.
You're correct.
Thinking Arizona, but okay, that's fair. Councilor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. And as I've been listening to this conversation, it's always one, especially when you put up our population, that's going to spark this conversation. How is that information used as it relates to our job description and thus our compensation?
It's just through you, Chair. It's just a little unique because it is two different, we're applying kind of like employee compensation principles to this like elected official role. So I think the mayor's right to identify like what is this about competitiveness and this sort of thing. So, but we do look at kind of a geographic area. We look at comparators on several different levels so that we can pick reasonable comparators, because we don't want to pick like large city centers or things. So for this role, I think it's like services that the municipality at lower or upper tier, single tier, that these things that all of that is factoring in. I understand the population is sort of like a tricky thing that we can't quite put our hands around, but we're trying not to pick like a Mississauga, Toronto, this sort of thing, right? What else is similar to us? And since, just to flag as well, since we're using the same comparator group as staff, we just want to keep that in the back of our minds, you know, unless there's a real, we can identify and put our hands around what the difference is between the roles, which there is a difference. Yeah, I would just caution that. Because for staff, the big driver as well is geography, because you're not necessarily going to be able to pull somebody up from south of Barrie for certain roles.
Just have a quick supplemental.
Councillor Kent and Councillor Edwards. Oh, sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Just a quick supplemental, if I may, through you. So this population data is maybe a little less relevant as it relates to council, because to the mayor's comment. But what I think it sparked and sparks is actually the nature of our role is year round at a much, and I think somehow finding a way to acknowledge this, at least to say we actually have a population. What was the number you used? 30, whatever, it's 30,000, right? Throughout the year, like that is a fact. And at different points in the year, we will hear from different groups of people, but that number is a whole number. So somewhere, I think that needs to be acknowledged, because then I think that helps us understand the actual role that we're doing. So maybe separate from this, but it's just a footnote. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Kent, I think I called you second, and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Very, very quick comment. I think that I don't think compensation for a municipal committee, like municipal council like this, has anything to do with competitiveness. It's not like I'm going to choose to go be a councillor in Toronto. That's not the trade-off. I think it's really more a question of what is the scope of the responsibility, and making sure that people are being the weight of the responsibility and the scope of the responsibility. And I think when you have a $300 billion tax base of assets up here, you've got to be treated and respected in that context. I don't think it has anything to do with competitiveness. I think it has to do with what's the scope of the job, what are the responsibilities, and making sure that is a fair compensation for the work. And I'm not saying it isn't or it is, but I don't think it has anything to do with competition. That's not why any of us are doing this. And so anyway, I would just go back to, it's really something completely different, which is what's the scope and what's the risks and the responsibilities that are required by somebody who chooses to do this.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards and Councillor Bosenworth.
Yeah, just a question. How many people on that council work more than 21.5 hours a month? Because that's what our payroll shows, is it not? 21.5, but we look
You're
like we're
paid
getting
for the
$100.
meetings, that's why. Yeah.
Pardon?
You're paid for the meetings. is sort of
That's what the
how
payslip says.
how the policy
Say
is written.
everyone here should be doing well over 21 hours a month. And it looks like we're getting a lot. A councillor in Caledon in the region of Peel, if they're on regional council, and this was quite a few years ago, was about 115,000 a year. And
it's small.
yeah, and it's small, but I'm saying, like, we always step back, but everyone's working more than 21 hours a month, or they're,
Thank you. Councillor Bosenworth.
This has all been an interesting discussion. But I don't think anybody has mentioned that we should be changing the list of comparators, which is really what they're asking of us today. So I would suggest we could continue this discussion when we have the data from the comparators, and nobody suggested we should add anybody or take anybody out of the comparators, because I think it's a good list of comparators.
Councilor, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa.
I actually, through you, did want to talk about a couple of the comparators, actually a number of the comparators. And I just didn't know that we were there yet. So in all the conversation. No, yeah, sorry, but no, I would just say, but so for instance, and it's because I've worked with these counselors. I know what goes on in Georgian Bay, and I know what goes on in Lake Bay, quite frankly. Only because I have family members also that have land there and different things. And so, but it's interesting because I recognize the challenges about Georgian Bay, and honestly, the majority is water access. Right? Like that's the whole conversation that we have at district and different things about how many people are actually water access. So it's a very different conversation. It's not a comparable to Muskoka Lakes, in my opinion. They're not traveling like if I want to go to Windermere, it's like an hour drive for me, like type thing, right? Like it's that sort of conversation that, so it's not quite the same. So that one, and even I would say Lake of Bays is just it has similarities, but not the same as Muskoka Lakes and the same demands. And a lot of the interesting thing is if I was to pick the comparables, Blue Mountains for sure. And interestingly, when we were going, I'm going to go Mayor Furness way back when we attended Blue Mountains to discuss the short-term rental situation way back when. And that really opened up our eyes as to who their comparables and like what those conversations. And in fact, it elevated our Muskoka Lakes. Like it feels like we're trying to take away from Muskoka Lakes and not celebrate what we are when we all of a sudden shrink about when these kind of things come up, right? It's like, oh no, we're just little. I don't believe the taxpayers think of us that way. And I can remember the MLA a number of times over the years saying, I can't believe you guys do this job for that pay. So it's interesting to me that I could even, those are the two I would say. I don't know that Midland, I don't know enough about Midland, quite frankly, but those are the two that kind of concern me because when you throw them in the mix, it drags down everything. And when you take this, the smallest comparables, right? So anyhow, that's just what I would suggest is if we were trying to narrow it down. Everybody else I feel is comparable. I can't honestly talk about Collingwood as far as waterfront goes, for instance.
Thank you. Excuse me. Anyone else with a comment or a question? Sure you can.
Thank you. I'd also like to see what the pay scale is for each of those on that. It shows the households because we've got 9,000 households and yet a lot of them must be sitting empty. We've only got 6,500 people. So I think I would bring it in. What are the pay scales for those counselors as well? So we can see them. Thank you.
Director Procy.
Thank you. I know that's and I agree. I think the difficult thing is that's what this is seeking. So we kind of need to set the list of comparators so that we can go out and seek that information to bring it back. So that's the information we're going to get back in this where they're at.
Thank you. May I ask one question? In terms of retrieving this information from these different municipalities, is it just an electronic communication? Like, does somebody have to go root this stuff out, or do you literally pull it off the internet? It's available. We could all go look at it if we wanted to. I'm just not sure what happens next and why we couldn't just throw 3 or 4 on there if it's not going to take a lot of time and energy to look at it.
So it depends on the township, but it depends on how their bylaws written, if they update with the new rates for council every year. And we certainly, that's why we're having the discussion. Like we certainly, this is the question, if you want removed and added so that you feel good about the group that you're comparing against. So if you want to remove some smaller ones, add some bigger ones, it will change the financial recommendation in the end. That's why it's a really important decision point.
Understood. Okay. I think we've run out of comments and questions. I'm a little unsure about how everybody wants to move forward. Do we want to, I don't really know. Do we want to make suggestions in writing to Director Perosi or to Ms. Lehman after this meeting, defer it a month and add or take off? I mean, we'll be here all day if we're trying to pull municipalities off a map. And I still think that the fundamental wall we're going to run into is coming up with a realistic number for our seasonal residences. There are no tax, as Director Perosi said, there are no more sort of tax lists or voters lists. So we're down to estimating. We know how many tax bills we send out. We just don't know how many people are regularly domiciled in any one of those places. Councillor Edwards.
I believe on the election for the voters, you had each candidate had so much per person to spend. We should be able to pull those figures and get what they were off of that.
So anyone who is a Canadian citizen resident with property up here and over the age of whatever the voting age is, 18, would be presumably shown on that list. So
right.
it's a number. It's not the number, but it's a number.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just speak to that, absolutely, we can get the voter numbers from these areas. And the last election was 2.5 years ago, so kind of to the point of this, it's not completely up to date information, but we can definitely look to put some more information on the chart for you to, if you direct us to do so. Yeah, we're just looking for direction.
CAO Pink, sorry, Director Pink, CAO Pink.
Thank you, through you. I think ultimately, as we've heard, what is before you is to determine the comparator list. And as we heard, the results of that will lead to those financial numbers. I think you can, what I get the sense, I certainly wouldn't recommend that we sit around trying to pick municipalities around this table. But I'm sure with a short break, we could draft a resolution that the matter be deferred and come back with a revised comparator list that more closely aligns with either the voter roll, or I think that's why, in essence, you do have the households column there. It will vary by municipality if it's somewhere usually between 2 to 3 people per household, but you'll see we are in the middle of the range of the households. But staff can certainly be directed to come back with an alternative list for your review and discussion in a month or two time. I think the policy reads a minimum of 18 months prior to the election, so we have a few months to solidify this. It is an important step in the process, so it is important to get it right. And we can certainly come back with a revised list that's closer to our permanent and seasonal year-round population. I think we've alluded to it in a few comments, but I think it is important to note too, in the staff report, we note, keep in mind, this was the list used for the staff compensation review as well. So for the sake of consistency, this same comparator list was brought forward. So I think council should be cognizant of that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're not looking to do anything here, even with a break, an extended break, where we should just defer it and come back next month, or is that an unreasonable expectation?
I think probably that I look to the clerk, but certainly I think the proper approach would be a resolution to defer, outlining what revisions or what we would look for in a revised comparator list. We could also include, I did hear some discussion about possibly looking at an update to the policy regarding other benefits such as conference attendance and training. And we could certainly roll that into the resolution if needed as well, if that's a consensus of council. But I see the clerk.
Director Perosi.
Thank you. Before we take a break, I just want to be very, very, because this is staff's recommendation. And without any further direction, this would come back as staff's recommendation. So I just want it to be very clear exactly what you're asking us to go back and revise it for. So if it's specifically to do with population or specifically to do with something else, we just need that direction provided so that we can look at the list from that scope.
Well, certainly. Thank you for that. And I don't see any other hands up, so I'll take a stab at it. Sorry. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll take a shot at it. I think certainly something to reflect the incremental workload that comes with the fullest population that we have up here for increasingly long periods of time that are subject to being served by all of council the way everyone who's here year round is. So it's that number, driving towards that number, that I think is the real challenge. There was work done. I don't remember it. I think it was at district, and I think it came up with an estimated, based on feedback from a survey, how many people normally reside in this spot. And it was in the 2 or 3 range, I think. Use that as a multiplier, and then we could come up with a number, a bigger number than we have right now. Councillor Bosenworth and Councillor Nishikawa. Did you ever hand up? I thought you did.
No.
Oh, okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Well, again, if I go back through you to Crystal, the reason why I did look at that population of Georgian Bay and Lake of Bays, again, it's difficult for me to imagine Muskoka Lakes being compared to 2,500 people or 3,400. Like, it's hard for me to think that those are comparables. And so that's why I recommended that they not be used. If I needed to be more specific, because I think I heard she needed more specific reasons why. And that was it. It was exactly that population. It is not in line at all to our communities, I believe.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. And the other one in there is Seawin. It's quite a small population. And so.
Thank you. Yeah, let's, can I make a suggestion that we take a break, and we take a good break, like 15 minutes till 10 minutes to 3. And when we come back, we will have addressed our minds to some way to pull names out of, to potentially come up with names that are better comps than some of the ones we're looking at right now. All right, we'll take a break. Thank you. I'm waiting. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the time on this one. I've been sort of handed two options and we want to keep this, I think, as straightforward as we can. One of them really is, bear in mind that what we're doing here right now is just trying to identify the comparators. None of the work's yet been done to determine how much anybody gets paid in whatever jurisdiction. We don't know anything about that. What we're trying to do is identify a better list of comparators to the circumstance here, given all that we know about the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and given that we don't actually think that some of the comparators are directly comparable to our circumstance. I will tell you what, there's two resolutions. They propose amendments, basically, to the list of comparators. One of them is just simply the addition, no change other than the addition on this one, of two other municipalities not currently represented. One of them is, actually, it's not the addition, the removal of Lake of Bays and the removal of Georgian Bay. It's that simple. The other one is, and I'm happy to just go with that first one if we want to. The other one gets more complicated. The other one is basically to suggest that we go back and actually mine for better or different comparators that are most closely aligned with two factors: the total population of the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and presumably that would mean some approximate estimate of our seasonal population. And the second factor that we would be mining for is the assessed value of presumably residential real estate or total real estate in that municipality. So it's a little more complicated because in order to start mining for total population, we have to make some assumptions about what our total population is. We know it's not 6,800 or whatever is represented on the current list. We have maybe guesses as high as 35,000 seasonally, and we have some work that was done, I believe, by the district based on a survey that presumably we could rely on. It's as good as anything that's out there. It's no guarantees it's right, but it's, you know, it's as good as we can bring it, close as we can bring it home. Well, that's true. And the other thing we can do is just simply adopt the resolution as it was presented with the comparator list that was included with the package yesterday or today's package. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I would be happy with the first resolution that you brought forward, eliminating Lake Bays and Georgian Bay. But I would also ask to confirm that the information that was even in this report is correct today. So it's not 2022 kind of numbers or whatever that is. And it's just an up-to-date view. If that's, I don't know that this is right or wrong at this moment, but I just know that just some work Rob's doing, it makes me think, oh, there might be some other information.
So basically removal of those two other lower tier municipalities from the District of Muskoka and verification that the underlying facts in our comparator base are current and accurate.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone with another idea or better, a different idea? Councilor Roberts.
Not different through you, Your Worship, but I like the second option that brings in the seasonal demand on our position. Or not seasonal, yeah, the population growth.
All right, so we are 1-1. Councilor Mazan.
I think what I'm struggling with currently is on the fly trying to make this kind of a decision when I think I'm not fully clear as to the impact of changing this. Like, so if I was to use the first one, what's the impact on our decision making by removing these two comparators? If those are the comparators we've always used, So statistically, we just have used this information. And so I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable with giving staff direction to remove something or add something or change how we're doing it, when I'm not sure I'm fully clear on what the impact of that is.
Director Perosi, I see your hand raising.
Thank you. Through you. In regards to process that has been taken for council compensation review, it has been quite dealt with differently in the past few years since this policy came into place. So this chart that is in front of you is the one that was used for staff. So I just want to be clear that the information that's in front of you was the one that was approved by staff earlier, approved to use for staff earlier this year. So, and then to respond to Councillor Nishikawa's comment, the information would have been current as of that time because it's the exact same chart that was used for staff. So I just want to be clear that that's where this chart has come from.
Thank you, but if I could have a quick supplemental, I guess, and I'm not trying to put staff on. I guess my comment is I'm feeling uncomfortable with knowing that 8 months ago or whenever it was, we did this with staff, this was and I'm not sure. And I'm not sure I understand the impact in this particular conversation right now of us removing data or changing this as to how that has an impact on the discussion we're having. So again, I think we're putting staff actually in a bit of an uncomfortable spot.
Thank you. All right, so are you asking, or you want to you're suggesting a deferral and more information later?
This is like there's 3 options in front of us right now that we're being asked to help you say, which one do I read? And yet each one outside of what staff has recommended, the other 2 we're making recommendations to change variables in that. And I don't understand what the impact is. So perhaps if we choose one of these other 2 options, I just would like to understand what the impact of doing so is. So I don't know how to get to that point.
Thank you. We'll CEO Pink.
Thank you, through you. I'll try my best to keep it sort of simple, but I do look to Ms. Lehman, who's much more familiar with compensation reviews. But in simple terms, I don't think you know the impact of the one option of removing Lake of Bays or Georgian Bay. I think there's an assumption that because they have a lower population base, that their councillors are compensated less. Ironically, you may find out, you could remove those comparators, and we might find out that they're the highest paid councillors in Ontario, and your wages at the 60th percentile as per the policy would actually be lower than if you had included them. I think the other option of basing it on either overall assessment base or total population, presumably those larger settings will have higher compensation for council, and that would likely be the outcome of the wage review. I think I would be remiss not to state that staff's recommendation is to use the same comparator list that was included for staff. I can't speak for staff, but I think the optics or how that will be received, that a different comparator list is used for council than staff, may not be overly well received. And I think council needs to be cognizant that in 4 years' time, when the next staff compensation review is done, they'll be likely looking and questioning, should we not also have the same comparator list that council used 4 years prior? But just like council to be cognizant of that, and those are sort of the 3 options, but we really don't know, again, the outcomes until we find out the results of how councils are compensated in these municipalities.
Councillor Kent, I think you were first, then Councillor Bosenworth, and Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. My suggestion, after having, I heard what David just said, but I think that we should go to the third alternative, which is send staff back, leave the existing comparables on there, and just add these other metrics. I think we need to know, we need to make, the metrics all matter. It's not just who the competitors are, it's what metrics we're using. And I think the overall population base and the tax base is probably the largest consideration, in my opinion. And we need to just send them back to collect that data on whatever basis we can get it on consistently across some of these townships. And I don't think it makes any difference whether we keep them on there or we don't keep them on them when they start evaluating it, or the consultants start evaluating it, they'll make a decision how important one or the other is.
So what you're proposing is we measure, if I'm, just to clarify, measure the same list that was presented that we've already used for
Staff.
Staff, with the addition of 2 new factors. But how would that result in anything different than what it's already in? We got a
Well,
fixed
because-
list of comparators.
Well, it's not so much the names, it's the fact that Muskoka Lakes, instead of having 6,500, would be more comparable to Collingwood at 24,000 people. Do you know what I mean? Like it's going to shift us from being at the bottom of the list of small guys, and you'll have to take both issues into consideration, but at least you'll have the data to decide which ones. I mean, I guess I don't have any problem if you take number 1 and number 2 off. I just think they're lakefront, they're waterfront. So if you take those away, you've just eliminated that metric, as a comparator. So I'm saying all the factors go into it and you decide where you're most comparable. I certainly would increase the amount of data rather than decrease the amount of data. I don't care if you take off 1 and 2, that's fine. And then, as you suggested, add more information. That's where I think we ought to go. Did I lose you?
No, I just forgot to turn it on. But it was really good up until then. I think the data drives the list of comparators, not the other way around. The data is how we sift through all the municipalities in Ontario and find out which ones are closest aligned to us. If we're already fixed on that list that as you had suggested, then the additional data, I don't think yields a different result, does it?
Well, except for, Mayor Kelly, if you added, let's say it turns out that Lake of Bays has a very high tax base. Like, we're making the assumption that, yes, they have low populations like we do, but they're not counting their seasonal population either. So I was just saying, let's get all the data for all of them. Then we decide to pull off Lake of Bays and the other 2 because they're not comparable. Okay. But I think if we don't have the other data, whether it be for staff or for council, the data is not complete, and I don't think you're making a decision based on the right stuff.
Ms. Lehman?
I could just clarify the process in the sense that the comparators aren't further weighted based on that data. So the mayor's right when he says we collect all of it and then we basically order it in highest to lowest, and then we pay at a percentile. So that's where you get kind of where you go above the middle in the order of them. You can still follow that process of dropping them off after, but we would normally aggregate the data and not show all the detail. It's fine. But just to clarify, once you have them all in there, you're not saying one is more important than the other necessarily.
Yeah, that was my assumption. Okay, I forget who was next, but I'm sure Mr.
Yeah, I think the answer, I think I got the answer. I think what my question was, what are we going to do with this data? And I think Director Lehman gave us the answer, and that is we're going to just take them, add them up, and make sure we're at 60%. So who we do select does matter. And I think probably Lake of Bays and Georgian Bay perhaps shouldn't be in there.
But based on what? That we don't think they're going to be paid, they're not going to help us? Because I don't think we want to fall into that.
No, I think there's quite a bit smaller than us, that's all.
Okay. Councillor Edwards, I can see we're moved up all
Should be
along.
very simple. Get the pay scale of all of them, what they're being paid, and let's look at it. In other words, are they making 20,000 and making 40,000 each? Put it down and let's look at. You don't need numbers. You don't need anything else like that. Just see what they are, what their pay scale, and that should be just a phone call to each municipality.
And thank you for that. And I think that's actually what we're hoping to do.
Well, that's
and the
right.
question is, who's on that list of numbers that we're looking at?
Well, let's get the whole list that's there right now, and then just look at it. Then we can see.
So you're comfortable then
I'm comfortable
sticking with
it
the
if I-
list
if
as
I
we
knew what you
presently
were
has
paying.
it.
So
have it.
if in other words, if Lake pays, say they're getting $5,000 or $6,000, I would probably drop them off the list. But if they're making fairly, no, because you look at the numbers that they've got, we've got 3 times the amount. There, if you look at that chart there, they're 2,500. Like I say, we're about 8,000 right now, not counting our seasonal even. And that, so it makes a big difference.
I agree that it makes a difference, but the difference, the way you're describing it, comes down to who's paying the most, and we want to compare ourselves to them. I don't think that's our job.
No, but you should have, if you're going to leave them all, everybody on the list, you should know what their pay scale is. That's what I'm saying.
And we will. And I think if I don't want to put words in Ms. Lehman's mouth, but the goal really would be to assure that based on the list we've agreed to, we are in the 60th percentile from
Mhm.
top to bottom.
Right.
Okay, we're underway now. All right, any more questions or comments? Have I read this? I read this? I don't think I've read this. I literally have heard one for reading the new option number one for reading the new option number 2, and a whole bunch of hybrids. So I'm really back to reading the list that we currently use for staff, updating the information to reflect current remuneration, and making certain through the good work of our HR group that our compensation falls into the 60th percentile of that list. I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved, I better read the right one though. Yeah, be it resolved that council approve the recommended comparators as outlined in Appendix 1 to report LS-2024-036 for the council remuneration and benefit review. Does anyone have any comments on that resolution? Any questions regarding the resolution? Councillor Kent, your hand is up.
It's down now. I would just want to make sure you were adding in the collection of the other data. That's all.
Okay, I hadn't. Yeah, okay. Okay, you've heard that. Anybody have any comments, any questions? We got the resolutions on the floor. It's been read. I'll call the question. All in favor? And all opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Anybody can hear me.
No,
Well, you can now.
it was a relief.
So you're unusually silent.
Well, that's because we're not 60th percentile performers, but I digress.
Okay, let's work on this one. You can hear me now. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-129 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket mole roll number 4-22-006 be read a first and second time. Comments, questions, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Next one, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-129 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket mole roll number 4-22-006 be read a third time and finally passed. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Crowder, you have a presentation on 263-315 something 51 Ontario Inc.
Through you, Mayor Kelly. As council may recall, zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3024 in the name of 2633151 Ontario Inc. was last heard by Planning Committee on November 14th, 2024. Planning Committee recommended that the application be approved, provided the recommendations of the site review prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., dated September 13th, 2024, are implemented through the site plan control process. Staff would clarify that the proposed new building is automatically subject to the site plan control process, and therefore a site-specific bylaw to subject the development to site plan control is not necessary, and therefore you will not find one on the agenda. Staff have no further comments at this time, but are happy to assist council with any questions.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions? I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-130 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket 2633151 Ontario Inc. roll number 6-24-069-04 be read a first and second time. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. And then moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-130 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket 2633151 Ontario Inc. roll number 6-24-069-04 be read a third time and finally passed. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Next up, moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-131 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket gammon roll number 9-13-017-02 be read a first and second time. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-131 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket gammon roll number 9-13-017-02 be read a third time and finally passed. All in favor? It carries. Thank you. Oh, one moment. Yeah. You got all the time in the world. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-118 to establish an investment account in the name of the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? Any comments? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Next, moved by Councillor Zabit, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-126 to amend bylaw 2021-104, being a bylaw to designate persons authorized to issue and authorize payments on behalf of the corporation be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? It carries. Thank you. Next up, moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-117 to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute and affix the corporate seal to a license agreement, Lieu, roll number 4-11-078, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? I'll call a question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the bylaw 2024-120, being a bylaw respecting the sale of original road allowance designated as parts 2, 4, and 5 on Plan 35R-27537, District Municipality of Muskoka, roll number 3-2-107, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, and 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that bylaw 2024-120 to stop up, close, and convey those portions of original road allowance designated as parts 2, 4, and 5 on Plan 35R-27537 be given 3 readings and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. It carries. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-124, being a bylaw respecting the disposition of township-owned land, designated as Part 3 on Plan 35R-27537- District Municipality of Muskoka, roll number 3-2-107, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, and 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that bylaw 2024-124 to dispose of Part 3 on Plan 35R-27537 be given 3 readings and finally passed. Questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. All right, next up, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-125, being a bylaw respecting the sale of an original road allowance designated as Part 2 on Plan RD-797-REES, roll number 4-16-056, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, and 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that bylaw 2024-125 to stop up, close, and convey that portion of original road allowance designated as Parts 2 on Plan RD-797 be given 3 readings and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. All right, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-127, being a bylaw respecting the sale of an original road allowance designated as Parts 1, 2, and 3 on Plan 35R-27433- Billinghurst/Rickard, roll numbers 9-1-055/9-1-055-03 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, and 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that bylaws 2024-127 to stop up, close, and convey those portions of original road allowance designated as parts 1, 2, and 3 on Plan 35R-27433 be given 3 readings and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. That carries. I know. All in favor? No. All right, this one moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-132 to appoint a bylaw enforcement officer for the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Anybody have any questions on this one? Seeing none, I'll call it. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-133 to amend bylaw 2022-107, which is a bylaw to conserve, prohibit, protect, restrict, and regulate the possible harvesting, removal, injuring, damaging, and destruction of trees on private property in the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. It carries. Getting close. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-134 to amend bylaw 2022-108, which is a bylaw to regulate and prohibit the modifications being made to the landscape on properties in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? Thank you. That carried. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-135, being a bylaw to deem lot 90 on Plan 6 in the former Township of Wood, now in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, District Municipality of Muskoka, being a lot on a plan of subdivision, is hereby deemed not to be a lot on a plan of subdivision for the purposes of Section 50, Sub 3 of the Planning Act, 1990, as amended. House, roll number 6-5-035, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-136, being a bylaw to appoint council members as members of the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Any questions? Councillor Nishikawa, oh no, you're voting, pre-voting. All right, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Oh, is it time? Thank you for that. I'm going to actually just say a couple of words. I did this last year, and frankly, I think it's appropriate for me as the mayor, but also on behalf of council to say a few things to council and to staff. And I have a couple of thoughts in writing. Well, I'm not going to read it, and I can't find it. So it may make this really brief. I'm going to actually cut it way down because I'm looking outside and I can see that anybody who's got to travel ahead of them is going to have a lot of work cut out for them to get out of here and get back to their places. Okay, couple of things. I think you've all heard me from time to time say how much I enjoy this role. And I think that was part of what I talked about last year. I can tell you I'm absolutely honored to serve as mayor of this township. It is a distinct pleasure and a real honor to serve with such capable and passionate and committed councilors, and especially when we are so well represented by our staff. I can tell you that being in this building probably more often than most people would prefer means that I get contact with a lot of staff. And I can tell you that every single person that I've worked with, I ask questions of, that I've had a chance to dialogue with, has impressed me. We are unified we're different in a lot of ways. The role of council and the role of the mayor is different, I think, by a long mile than the role of staff. But I can tell you without hesitation that there is no difference in the commitment to serve, no difference in the commitment to do the right thing for our residents, to look out for them, to protect them, to keep them healthy and well, to preserve and protect our environment, to help to grow the economy, all of the good things that we push hard for as policymakers and as those who are charged with the responsibility of enacting these bylaws are being picked up and run with great confidence and great competence by staff. So my message is really simple. I want to thank everybody who contributes to the success of this township. I think we've moved the needle a long way this year. We have a long way to go. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a lot left to be done. But the good news is the more that I'm here, the more exposure that I have to this place, the more confidence I have that we're going to accomplish great things. Even when we find differences of opinion, even when we can come to different conclusions based on the same reading of the same material, it's from a good place. It's people applying their expertise, knowledge, experience, and their shade, their color to something that I may be, or any one of us may be reading and interpreting differently. I think that's healthy. I think that allows us all to grow in our roles. It allows us all to get smarter every single day. It allows us all to represent the best interests of our residents in just a tremendous capacity. And as I said, it's a distinct honor to serve here. It's the best. It's the highlight of my career to have spent the time in the company of those of you on council, those of you on staff, and to know that we're all pulling on the same different oars, but to fight the same battle. I think that's terrific. A couple of things, and then I will wrap up. We have one of the tests that I've applied my entire career before public life, and I can tell you, this role. And for everybody who works in this building and works for this organization outside of this building, this is not an easy job. It's not easy to have everything analyzed microscopically and broadcast, all over social media. It's not easy to have to, plan your trips to the post office to around midnight so that you can get it in and out surgically rather than be delayed. It's part of the job, and I welcome it and I relish the opportunity, but this is not an easy part of the job. And I can tell you last week when I was quietly thrilled with the performance of our operations group, our roads, maintenance crew, our fire service, I was reading that I was the only one seemingly who lived here who doesn't know how to plow roads because everybody on Facebook does. And I don't know how, I have 66 years of thick skin. It doesn't seem to faze me as much as I thought it would. But I'll tell you what, we have staff members, we have people here who are dedicating the best of their abilities. We need to make sure that we stick up and look out for them. They are the backbone of this place. One of the other things that I want to mention, one of the tests we've gone through this year is one that I call of resiliency. We've lost a couple of really important people in our lives. With Derek Hammond deciding to retire as CAO, and with Ken Becking retiring from his role in the operations side of things. That was a shock to learn that was coming down the pike. And I can tell you, other organizations who have gone through that have faced difficult transition times. I'm thrilled to tell you, absolutely beside myself to tell you that as much as we might miss and cherish the time we spent with Derek and with Ken, they were both interesting and fun people to be around, we haven't lost a step. David Pink has stepped up as CAO and literally assumed the role, assumed the mantle, and led the charge. I can tell you from experience from the last several weeks and from working with Nick and not with Nick, I wasn't telling him how to plow the roads, but I was telling him, we were listening. We were working and trying to figure out how to get stuff done that we have found a wonderful replacement for Ken. He's got his own mind and his own opinion, a world of experience. He's a great leader. I really do believe, from what I can see, that he's inherited a team that have as much allegiance to him in his role as anybody has had. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jennifer Huff as well. I mean, she's more recent and less, we've had less contact, Jennifer and I, but I can tell you she has to be an incredible leader because I've cut her lawn twice, I've blown all the leaves, and I snow blowed her driveway 4 times. And for the life of me, I don't know why. I think that's the hallmark of leadership. But the miraculously disappearing fake boot really helped me believe that I needed to go blow the driveway. But anyhow, it thrills me to no end to see that stuff doesn't get dropped in the transition, that leadership can transition one to the next, and we carry on and we move forward and we get the benefit of new ideas and new inputs. It all makes us stronger. And like I said, I couldn't be more pleased with the performance of this group, all of these people. I hate calling it group because I know we have a big wall in the middle, but the honest, in all honesty, I felt part of this team, part of this group, whether it's staff or council, right from the first time I came in here 6 years ago. And it gets better and better and better. I hope everybody feels the same way and shares in that. Last part of the message is to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. We have some difficult, challenging people in challenging circumstances around here. And I get emotional about it. So to the extent you can dig deep and help somebody out, please do. But most importantly, take the time, relax, enjoy yourself, and celebrate any way you can, whatever you can. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays to anybody who doesn't celebrate Christmas. Happy New Year. And please don't forget to come back. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, what do we do next? Okay, we have a resolution. We're going to move into closed. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that council in closed session convene at 3:42 p.m. for A, exemption, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, Section 239, Sub 2, Sub C of the Municipal Act 2001. And this one is no longer, or do we still read it?
No, it's not required.
Not required. Okay. So for that reason, anyone with any questions, we're going to move into closed, assuming we all vote for it. I'll call the question. All in favor?